Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal Raza Khan and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, Pakistan is located at a place in globe which bears the brunt of two major weather systems. One can create high temperatures, along with that drought like heat waves, and another which creates monsoon rains. Now, temperatures are getting intense because of the climatic changes. Drought prolongs. Along with that, the monsoon rains are erratic. Either we are bearing the brunt of flash floods as well, as we have witnessed in the last year, 2022. Now, due to global warming, greenhouse gas emissions, and the regional polluters, including India, Pakistan is bearing the brunt, despite Pakistan is the lowest emitter and only contributing into the carbon emissions 0.9%. This is the situation in which Pakistan is located in South Asia. Now, United Arab Emirates is hosting 28th Conference of Parties under United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Dubai. What are the expectations out of this important climate mood? Whether this is going to realize the loss and damage fund, which was already conceived in the last Cop27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. Now, developing countries is looking towards the developed world, that they must have to feel their onus and they have to react immediately because the time is running out. Caretaker Prime Minister Anwarullah Kakar is going to lead Pakistan delegation in the Cop28. High-level meetings and all others in which Pakistan will emphasize upon its case of climate justice. What the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres rightly said when he has visited Pakistan back in 2022. He also urged the world that the era of global warming is over. Now it's global boiling. What he said is that it is the time to take action. We don't have any time left really. So the importance of this COP is very important, very imperative, very urgent. What he said and how Pakistan is actually suffering. We have a soundbite of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres along with a report. Please go through it and then we'll start our program related to the climate justice.
No more hesitancy, no more excuses, no more waiting for the others to move first. There is simply no more time for that. It is still possible to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius and avoid the very worst of climate change, but only with dramatic, immediate climate action.
The host of the 28th United Nations Climate Change Conference, or Conference of the Parties, is United Arab Emirates, where COP28 will take place in Expo City, Dubai. The COP28 will provide an opportunity for the world to come together, course correct, and drive progress to keep the Paris Agreement's goal of limiting the global temperature rise to well below 2 degrees Celsius, while aiming for 1.5 degrees. In the face of escalating climate challenges, a country contributing less than 1% to global greenhouse gas emissions, Pakistan is confronting an outsized battle against climate adversities. Pakistan's vulnerability to climate change is starkly evident as the country's exposure to extreme weather events has risen drastically, with the devastating floods of 2022 exemplifying this trend. Between June and October last year, with a third of the country inundated, the 2022 floods killed more than 1,700 people, left 2.1 million homeless, and caused roughly $15 billion in damages and another $15 billion in economic losses. While the world looks to COP28 for leadership and commitment, Pakistan's story is a reminder that every action counts. From large-scale projects to community-level initiatives, the journey toward a sustainable and resilient future is a collective one. In this endeavor, Pakistan stands as a testament to what can be achieved with vision, commitment, and collective action in the face of climate diversity.
Viewers, you have just witnessed that how Pakistan is paying the brunt of the climatic changes. Pakistan is the most resilient nation, and this is what we are presenting at the COP28. And also, Pakistan is going to plead its case of climate justice. To talk on this important subject, we have in our studios Saira Ijaz. She is the senior analyst. Thank you very much. Dr. Khalid Waleed is also here. He is the environmentalist, and along with him we have Himayu Khan Sahab. He is the senior analyst and he is joining us online. Most welcome to you, sir. To start with, the COP28, that is very important juncture when Pakistan is going to plead its case for climate justice. How important this COP is for Pakistan along with the developing world?
You actually highlighted this, the answer of this question in your introduction, that this is not about Pakistan only or a country specific.
Definitely.
It is a global phenomena. It knows no borders. We need to act in a very, I would say, integrated manner, so that responses of one country, they translate to a unity response to address this climate issue. So COP is one way we can address, and this is a very high level platform where the decisions can be made. In terms of significance of COP or COP28, we need to gauge it in three different perspectives. First is the political economy of COP. Second is the economy of COP, and third is the socio-economic dimensions of COP. In terms of political economy, the world is divided into two divisions. First is the global north countries, and then global south countries. Global north countries, they have developed, and they have developed on the cost of global south countries suffering, and now it is time to address this climate injustice as well. In terms of economy, obviously global north country, they are the industrialized countries, they have the highest GDP, they have all the economic indicators right, but in terms of global south, there is poverty, there is inequalities, so on and so forth, many things. In terms of socio-economic development, they have the quality education, quality health system. Here in global south, we are suffering in terms of poverty, in terms of education, in terms of low standard of living. So we need to address these three things. COP provide these three things on one platforms, where just to mention last year's COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, where Pakistan's leadership, they provided a platform to the more climate adversities and the top vulnerable countries in the form of climate leadership, and they negotiated a deal, that is the loss and damage fund, so that the global north, they can provide the compensation to global south. This year's COP, we need to have this political economic agenda of COP28 going forward, so that we can achieve this operationalization of loss and damage fund that can translate it into the economic implications of COP28.
Definitely, we'll go through the nitty-gritties of how it is going to be operational, particularly the loss and damage fund. Prime Minister Saira is leading Pakistan's delegation into the COP, and he is having lots of engagements over there as well. So how do you see that what Pakistan is going to highlight? What would be the punchline what Pakistan is going to plead over there?
Actually, definitely in the last year's COP27 meeting, we highlighted the loss we've suffered during the catastrophic floods. But I think this time again, government has realized that we are going not only to ask or to request for the funds, but we will definitely show them the baseline we have prepared, climate resilient policies we are, making and formulating and implementing them. And because the main objectives of should be and are for this COP28 for Pakistan are that we have to make the world realize that our internal and domestic policies are in line with the climate resilient our climate resilient policies. And I guess so far our ministry, our government has done a very good job because international and the climate experts and policy makers are agreed on this thing, that international fund is not suffice to deal with this existential threat of climate change. We have to enhance our cash inflow, our our investment policies. We have to weave the climate considerations into all levels of policies.
Very important point. Dr. Himayu Khan Sahab, when we are talking about climate change and its aftermath, what Pakistan is suffering for, How do you see the loss and damage fund? Would it going to be operational, or we have to wait for a while?
Thank you, Faisal. I guess this is a very important event, and I guess in terms of the climate-related decisions, I think this is the only forum available. This is more than 190 plus countries are part of this. This is under the UN framework on Convention of Climate Change. Paris Agreement, our worthy panelist has already mentioned. In this sense, I guess this is the biggest and the most important decision-making body. Now, what has happened in the last COP27 that has happened in Sharm el-Sheikh, it was obviously Pakistan along with other global South countries where we were first able to make that part of the agenda of that particular conference. And then later on, we developed a consensus agreement, which was losses and damage fund. Now there is a big divide. As of now, as we speak, as the biggest number of world leaders and decision makers and policy makers are gathering in Dubai and discussing this, there's a huge division between the global south and the global north. Even this year's COP28 is going to be basically focusing on four important issues. One is how to fast track the energy transition in different countries. And global south is completely different and global north is completely different in terms of how the transition is taking place. The second is, and that's also one of the most important aspects, is the climate finance solution. Global South needs a lot of resources. Global South needs a lot of energy in terms of technology transfer that the Global North has accumulated over the years in terms of using the resources of the entire planet and then develop what they have. That's something very important which needs to be discussed. The third most important aspect which is being discussed and highlighted, and Pakistan is also part of the at the forefront, was the protection of nature, lives and livelihood. In the report that you have mentioned and you have mentioned earlier as well, according to one of the most important and authentic institution, which is called German Watch, which basically does the stock taking of what and how the countries are, according to their climate index, Pakistan ranks in the top 10 most vulnerable countries. And this is basically a data they have accumulated over the past 20 years. And we have suffered more than 200 different events related to climate change over the 20 years. Somehow we only know the droughts and the floods, but there are many, many other. We have the largest number of glaciers outside the polar North Pole, 7,000 plus. There has been an exponential decrease, or there has been an exponential increase in terms of the melting of those glaciers. It has many other reasons.
When we are talking about the COP28, we have witnessed already that in COP27 there was G77 plus China, which has supported Pakistan's case, and that's why the loss and damage fund was inaugurated. Or now the problem is that do you not think that countries, particularly in the developing world, what we call the global south, they are in silos, they are not joining hands with each other, although they are suffering because of the climatic changes, they have to be united at one platform so that a voice would be heard by the developed world?
I think, unfortunately, what you're saying is true, but to some extent, Global South is gathering under the leadership of G77 plus China. 130 plus countries are part of that. There was a unanimous voice that we raised in COP27. And now this year, when the stock taking is going to take place for the first time, that 5-year circle that we were talking about before the start of the program, we will discuss how the countries who promised that they're supposed to spend $100 billion in terms of the global south, which has been deficient, which has been lacking in terms of many things, in terms of mitigating the disasters that are happening there. So this is the first time it's going to happen. And then we are going to come up with the 2030 plan, how we will going to do that. So in that sense, yes, it's true. But I think Global South is now getting together because this calamity is an existential threat. The population is increasing in this part of the world more than in any other part of the world. And the resources are lacking here in terms of how to fight this. So I think the Global South has no option but to get together and demand more from the Global North. And this is basically, when you started the program, this is now we're talking about climate justice. We're not saying anything else that, we need more resources since we are lacking or we are poor. It's basically the global north has developed over 200 years, the technology, the resources that they have used. They are the cause of the climate change more than any other part of the world. So now we need climate justice. So this is the unanimous stand of the global south that not only Pakistan is representing, but G77 plus China is representing. And this is going to be the first time we will be asking them that, last year you promised that this is going to happen, but nothing has happened. So I think this is an eye-opener for the world. And Pakistan will taking the lead in terms of not only pleading our case, but pleading the case of the global south as a whole.
Okay, your point well taken. Dr. Khalid, when we have heard that this loss and damage fund would be kept under World Bank, and there would be a separate board would be constituted under United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Is it correct?
Yeah, I think this is the need of time. We need to operationalize this fund, and we need to done it in a way that is transparent, that is more efficient, and that is more fostering the equitable development in the global south as well. So we need to, I would say, that use it in efficient economic terms so that it can complement the macroeconomic prosperity and building the climate resilience at the same time. So we need to cater for that as well. Again, another thing is that we need not to plead a case of climate justice in a sense that we are demanding global north that we need this finance. We need to show them that we have to build the resilience of the people. We need to show that we need to incorporate these policies into our macroeconomic policies, and we need to make economic policies more aligned with the climate resilience policies so that they can see it as an investment opportunity, and our people see it as a people prosperity or people-centric financing coming into the country, so that the both parties, the global north and global south, they can come at a consensus point.
So we have heard a lot about the technical assistance, green growth fund, then green climate fund, then now the loss and damage fund. Would it going to be realized or operationalized, and a developing world would be compensated at least to the damages which were already done because of the developed world?
Well, one very actionable measure to do or operationalize these kind of fund is to integrate them into the macroeconomic policies. There are multiple ways to do that. First is the just energy transition partnerships. These are the agreements between G7 countries and the countries which have more coal tilted energy portfolio, so that they can retire their coal power plants and they get the financing. In that term, they are receiving these funds in terms of climate financing, but at the same time they are revitalizing or transforming their energy sector, shift from the fossil fuel based power plants to renewable energy power plants. In that term, they are more self-sufficient in the future, and they would not be needing that climate financing in the future because they are self-sufficient and they are containing their imports. Second thing is that if you want to integrate these policies into macroeconomic fold is to put a price on carbon emission. One way to do is establishing the carbon markets, so that the industrialist or industrial community in the global north which are producing the pollutions and emissions in China and India as well, they can purchase carbon credits from global south countries in a way that they are compensating them for their
So taking your
harms.
point, when purchasing of the carbon credits from a developing country, some of the developed world, they are giving the lucrative offers on that, but do you think, Saira, if you just reply on that, do you think that it is the right way, and the developing countries which are just in a way of development, whether they have to just plunge themselves into the carbon credits that we are just selling it to the world? What about their development on that account?
Though we deserve, and we are the global south, and now we are talking about Pakistan, but I think we need to focus on our internal setups also. Water is the currency of climate change, And Pakistan is so resourceful in terms of water. I think water pricing is one thing where we can, efficiently make our agricultural system very much effective, and to need the food security and the water security and for the provision to our population. We need to mobilize the domestic, public and private sector resources.
It's correct, but one question arises, and most of the developing countries, most of the media houses, civil society, they are asking this question, that if the developing world is not developing much, they obviously have the lower emissions.
Yeah.
And when they have the lower emissions, it means that they intend to grow, and when they grow there would be higher emissions, and why not to compensate those higher emissions rather than just to have investments into those carbon credits which are negligible?
I think in that we need to focus more on mitigation. Planning and how we can mitigate all this, and the climate adaptation, to be more, by introducing and by formulating and by, strictly implementing the climate smart policies.
But when we are talking about, Dr. Khalid, if you responded that mitigation is okay, but world, particularly the developed world, they are not ready to finance the adaptation because it's a long process, and in that even the climate resilient nations like Pakistan, they are going to adapt it, but they need support of the developed world. So how do you see that?
Well, again, this is a dilemma, but the answer to this dilemma lies in building an economic engine in front of these sustainability practices. For example, the global north, the developed countries, they have the finances. In global south, we have the potential to grow, but that growth is associated with I would say emission-based economies. We need to increase our emissions if we want to have economic growth. One way to deal with it, to couple it with low emission strategies. For that we need finances, we need technology, we need capacity building. Where to address this, we need to integrate global north and global south in a term that global north is providing financing and global south is using that finance to be more climate adaptive, more climate resilient. Just to give you an example, if Pakistan's industrialists, they see that we need to have more production, their emission will increase, but if they adapt more energy efficient appliances and energy efficient production systems, that would contain their emissions as well.
Definitely, you are talking about the green growth. We have to adopt it and adapt it as well. What about, Dr. Humayun, what about the bridging critical finance gap? Because it is important that the climate finance architecture must have to address this gap.
Absolutely. This is basically one of the biggest hurdles, dilemmas, and also an opportunity at the same time. Since we are discussing about the dichotomy in terms of what global north expect and what global south should do, there is no doubt what Dr. Khalid was saying and Ms. Sara was saying, there has to be a two-pronged strategy. One, we as a global south, and let's say take the examples of Pakistan, we have to stop taking off our own governance model, our economic model, our macroeconomic model indicators. What is that we can do in our capacity in terms of reducing the carbon emission? One of the biggest challenge as of now that we are facing, there is a huge growth in population in the global south. That is something which has to be taken into account in these countries where the governance model is very weak. There is political instability, there is economic instability, there is a debt crisis which is happening for a very long time. So this climate finance solution has to be very innovative. Yes, Global North over the year has accumulated wealth, engineering technology, and know-how how to have a sustainable development model. But if you still see the global emissions, it's most of the global north which is still contributing to this world CO2 emission the most. Global south, which is catching up, has this dilemma either to go for sustainable model or to go with available resources. For example, coal is something which is in many countries is becoming outdated, but if you see technology which is existing in the north, particularly in countries like Germany, Japan, US, there they have this 5th generation coal power plants, which are very efficient, which still are not as good as some other renewable sources, but since the abundance of coal is in the global south, so we have to use it. So if we get support from the global south, if we get support in terms of technology transfer, if we get support in terms of
this is the important point. This is the important point, Himayu. If you just go through that, in absence of technical or technological, along with the financial assistance from the developed world, what would ultimate be the Pakistan or the developing world's criteria, or they have to do regarding be the most climate resilient or climate smart green growth must have to be adopted? What would ultimate Pakistan do on that accord?
I think I would agree with the other panelists. There's no one formula for the entire global south. There are different countries with different economic models that they're trying to adapt, depending upon the available resources, depending upon the economic condition that is existing in these countries. I guess every country is taking different steps. When it comes to Pakistan, I think we are using a lot of our resources, our friendly countries' help, particularly now that we're talking about China-Pakistan economic corridor. Prime Minister has spoken when he was in the UN that this particular project has helped in terms of achieving sustainable goal of 2030 the most than any other initiative. We are not talking about going global green in the coming days in the China-Pakistan economic corridor. And then we're also using other sustainable renewable models, technologies that has available to Pakistan. And Pakistan is also one of the better equipped countries in the global south. There are many other countries, the African countries, there are certain other countries in South Asia which does not have that much paraphernalia or support. So that is a very complex situation. Your first question was very important. Is there a unanimous, cohesive voice? Yes, on the political front, there is this forum of G77 plus China, where Pakistan was leading last year and hopefully we will be leading this year. But then once you go through that and then you have to implement on your own, it becomes very problematic that, you know, this global south automatically has this dilemma that we cannot implement the entire policy in 133 countries. So these
definitely. Your point well taken. Dr. Khalid, how do you see Pakistan's proposal to have prioritize the grant-based climate financing and also equally streamlining the different access procedures, because that is very important. These are complicated right now.
Well, this is complicated because the competitiveness in climate financing, it's huge. I mean, we need to file the right proposal. We need to address the technicalities. We need to make it bankable so that it is not causing the hurdles in the growth, but it is generating some sort of economic engine as well as the climate resilience. At the same time, the equitable development as well. So we need bankable proposals for that. We need experts. We need to capacity build our bureaucracy. We need to capacity build our foreign service so that we can present more bankable case for Pakistan. Again, another thing is that we cannot present this case just on the basis that we are the 8th most vulnerable country in the globe in terms of climate change, or we have the less than 1% emissions in the global emissions. We need to be more logical.
We have to create our acceptance.
Acceptance in terms of just like the way we propose the financial proposals for the traditional projects, we need to deal the climate financing on the same basis, but counting the equitable development at the same time. Again, just to give you the example of carbon credits, the finances generated through those credits should be used for the climate financing to build the resilience of climate affected people, not as a revenue source. If we think that climate financing is a form of readily available money or readily available foreign exchange for the economy or for the profit purpose, this is the wrong notion. We need to use climate financing with a targeted audience, which is targeted people which are affected by these adversities of climate.
Definitely the climate conference which is going to be held in United Arab Emirates, it's not the forum to give money, but also it's basically the policy recommendations and policy decision making over there. So Pakistan is also pleading the case, Saira, that there must have to be the transparency in climate actions and also in climate financing. So how do you see that aspect as well?
Actually, it again, it connects the dots to the resilient policies at home. Again, my emphasis is again on that. We need to focus on rehabilitation. We have to focus on, resilient recovery. And the third point is my reconstruction framework based policies. Only then we will be able to, secure our position and will be able to plead our case in a better way. Because COP28 is not the case, because if you go through the history, so far Pakistan has received only $1 billion in the last 30 years. And experts are agreed on this thing that this getting fund from the loss and damage fund is not sufficient to handle this massive challenge of climate change. We need to focus on the climate resilient and the climate friendly policies. Because throughout the debate our focus is that during this meeting, it's not that they are going to give you a huge amount of money on your request or being the climate victim, and which we are. It's not the case. The funding would be based on the project to project, how well you presented your projects and how well and according to their own objectives.
Yeah, definitely it is. And
so
would you like to add, Dr. Khalid, about the transparency in climate actions and climate finance?
Well, I think transparency is very important because when you receive climate financing, you need to translate into the equitable development, and that should be people-centric, not the profit-centric or economic-centric. That should be socio-economic centric, or I would say equitable economic centric, so that the benefits of that climate financing is trickling down to the masses which are directly affected with the calamities of climate change. So we need to take that aspect very seriously because again this financing is just for those who are affected by these climate change disasters. Another thing is that we need to incorporate these climate change measures right into the macroeconomic policies of Pakistan. For example, greening the public sector development expenditures, greening the public investments, and then incorporating private sector investments.
So what about the decarbonization at the national level and also the green growth in Pakistan? Because ultimately it is not possible without financing and the technological aspects, because that ultimately has to be provided by someone.
If you take into account the EU's recent initiative, that is Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which would be implemented to all the sectors by 2030, all the exports and imports coming into the EU, those are subjected to carbon accounting, which means our exports, if they are produced with a carbon intensive production processes, they would get a duty in terms of carbon accounting, in terms of carbon emission fee. So we need to invest in the sustainable processes, and we need to make a partnership with private sector, with government sector, and with all the other countries, so that we are more not only climate resilient, more energy efficient, or industrial products, industrial processes, they are less climate intensive and more energy efficient, so that we can cater for that 2030 expansion of CBAM or Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. This would going to hurt our export competitiveness. So we need to
very important point. Imai Khan sir, when do you think that Pakistan is ready enough to have this green growth, and we are taking it into the policy decision making and also implementing on ground into the different projects? So do you think that Pakistan is doing enough?
I think the question is not that we are ready or not. I think we have to be, because right now, since we were discussing about how Pakistan has been affected in the last year through droughts and through glacial bursts and through rain and through floods, this is something which is not going to stop in this year or next coming few years. So I think we have to get ready. Now, there's something which needs to be also taken into account when we're talking about Global South, and let's forget about Global South. Let me give you an example of Pakistan only. It's not only that, we have to be very careful in terms of making our policies which is acceptable to European Union or the global north, Pakistan is suffering from multiple issues of geopolitics for last many years. Let's take the global war on terror, which has nothing to do with climate change, but somehow we are in the middle of that for last so many years. We have suffered billions of dollars, and the estimate amounts to 200 billion plus. Then we are in an economic meltdown for last many years. It has obviously something to do with our own bad policies, but there are always external problems. We have a refugee crisis for last many years where we have been hosting. So countries like us, things have to be taken into account in a very holistic way. And that's basically the case of Pakistan. When we were talking about this climate justice, this does not absolve us from the decisions that we have to take in terms of making a sustainable macroeconomic policies which are adapted to the climate change. But at the same time, the world also has to realize that, we have to be taking into account the problems which are not made by Pakistan, but these were many variables which taken into account. So in that sense, I think our case is very unique. We are going there. We have done it in the past. We have taken a lot of good policies in terms of our mechanism, in terms of our governance. They're not enough, but that's a start. And with this economic problem that we are facing, I think the world has to take into account these issues at the same time. And Pakistan case is very unique in that sense.
So, Emayu, if you just consider that there is no assistance available, no finances, no technology, nothing else. So, what would be the ultimate scenario? How much we are prepared for that? Whether we are going to take climate actions on our own selves?
No, I'm not saying there are nothing is available. There is a lot of help that we are getting from our allies and partners in the West. But my contention is it is not enough. The amount of suffering that this region, and particularly our region, has.
Emayu, I have said, let's suppose if that is not available. So, what would be the ultimate scenario?
I think in that case we have to work towards something which is sustainable. The population is growing exponentially. We are now 240 or 250 million people. And there's a chance that in the next 15, 20 years, this population will rise to 300 million people. I think this is the first step that we have to do. Then in terms of climate mitigation things, I think we have to adopt many measures in terms of going for sustainable development model in which we use less carbon emission, we use renewable resources, we use conservation method. In terms of our agriculture output, we have to develop more research in terms of we have already signed a lot of agreements with China in terms of helping in seed research, climate resilient seeds that we were supposed to get because weather patterns are changing here. Water intensive crops have to be replaced with less water intensive crop. In Pakistan, we have this sugar cane through which we make sugar, which is one of the most water intensive crop. We have to go to an alternative sources of making these things. So I think Pakistan has to adopt if God forbid there's no help from outside in its doomsday scenario, but I hope it will not happen. Cop28 will come up with something which will help not only Pakistan but the entire global south at the same time. And we
were actually supposing, so we have to be very hopeful on that situation as well. So Dr. Khalid, either Pakistan is going for ecological balance, we have already, or we are ready to accept green growth in Pakistan as a nation, because we are no doubt that this nation is very resilient, but we have to take things in practical terms. How do you see it?
Well, I would say there is a triangle of economy, energy and environment. We are facing this crisis, I call it as 3E crisis of Pakistan. There is a turmoil in economics. I mean, we have fiscal deficit, we have trade deficit, we have unsustainable energy choices, we import lots and lots of fuels in terms of fossil fuel, and that fossil fuel that damages environment, and then that environment in terms of floods, in terms of disasters, climate change, that affects the economy. So this is a triangle between economy, energy and environment. So we need to put green growth in the middle of this triangle, and we need to solve this 3E crisis through this green growth. One way to do is that we can get a just energy transition partnership agreement with G7 countries, just like the South Africa and Indonesia have done. They have pleaded almost 80 billion USD's case just to transform their energy sector. Pakistan can do that as well. For that, we need an
Pakistan is also pleading for $101 billion only for energy sector.
Energy
that is
sector,
there in the NDCs as well. That is nationally determined contributions.
Yep.
That is there.
That is there. In COP28, there would be global stock take as well. That would be gauging these NDCs as well, and NDCs would be updated and would be more operationable or actionable. So Pakistan can target that financing, transforming Pakistan's energy sector, converting our transportation towards EVs. We can translate that investment into that. This will save not only the billions of dollars in terms of imports, it will also save us from the environmental disasters such as smokes and floods and other sort of things, which will complement the economy as well. So we need to have this integrated and holistic sort of approach. Second thing is that we need to get into the regional dimension of this climate change as well. On one forum, I was suggesting that we can rename SARC towards South Asia's resilience to climate change. That would be SARC, but in a different terms, because this region, it is facing the similar kind of disaster.
Very well said. And a question arises here that Pakistan is suffering because of the climatic changes. Saira, how do you see that, what about those transboundary issues like transboundary water issue, we have transboundary pollutants, effluents and all that, and particularly because of the Indian industrialization or whatever pollutants and effluents are coming, they are coming straight away to Pakistan, and Pakistan is suffering. We are suffering from smoke and all other issues. How do you see that?
I guess by taking forward Dr. Saab's point of, seeing the things in regional context, in neighboring contexts. UN HED is also saying that we are in a climate emergency. There is no time. Our planet is getting hotter by every, single day. So I think we need to engage with India if it's case, because we have major transboundary issues with our neighboring country, India. Plead our case and to, by engaging through bilateral talks. Whether though there are very much strong restrictions from that side, we should keep knocking and we should keep engaging India on these very issues. Otherwise, not all we are the sufferers, we are the victims, we are already suffering. So time will come that they will also start suffering from that same very issue.
Very well said. Thank you very much, Saira, for being with us. Thank you very much, Dr. Khalid, here in studios, and thank you very much, Himayu, for being available online. Viewers, it is important, as our panelists suggested, that the time is running out, as even the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres keep on stressing that the developed world must have to realize the ground realities, and the reality is climate change, and the time is not enough that we have to just waste it, because we have to take action. The climate action is necessary. There must have to be funding for the developing world, which we call the Global South. Global South and Global North must have to come together to tackle, because this globe is the only planet to live in, and we have to care for the nature. We have to take care of this planet as well. This is the message of whole of the humanity, and whole of the humanity is foreseeing that COP28, which is now going to be held in United Arab Emirates in Dubai, in which Pakistani caretaker Prime Minister Anwarullah Kakad is leading the delegation. Pakistan is stressing upon that this COP must have to be very successful, in terms that developing world must have to get something out of this whole negotiation. This is all from Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.